It was a Friday night, and the air was thick with humidity and the promise of trouble. We were stationed at the dispatch bay, killing time with stale coffee and even staler jokes. Suddenly, the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio.
Medic 1, respond to a report of a gunshot wound, possible male, early 20s, address is...
We grabbed our gear and scrambled into the ambulance. Sirens wailed, our own personal soundtrack for the night. My partner Joe, a seasoned EMT with a sarcastic wit sharper than a scalpel, muttered,
Well, boys, looks like our dinner break just got shot.
He wasn't wrong. As we weaved through the city streets, the dispatcher updated us. The victim was found in a housing project downtown, a notorious area for gang violence. This wasn't going to be a walk in the park. I gripped the handrail as Joe navigated the ambulance with the practiced ease of a New York cabbie. We were about to enter a war zone, and the adrenaline was already starting to pump. We arrived at the scene to find a chaotic tableau of flashing lights and yellow tape. Police officers were trying to control a crowd that had gathered, their voices a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. We grabbed our equipment and made our way towards the apartment building where the real chaos awaited us. The air inside the building was thick with the metallic scent of blood. As we rounded the corner, the scene unfolded before us. It wasn't one victim, it was three. Three young men lay sprawled on the floor, each riddled with bullet wounds. It looked like a scene straight out of a gangster movie, except this was real, and these were real lives bleeding out on the floor. The scene was pure bedlam. Police officers barked orders, paramedics shouted for supplies, and the victims' moans and cries filled the air. Joe, ever the calm one in a storm, took charge.
All right, folks, let's do what we do best. You two, get on that one.
He pointed at me and another EMT, gesturing towards a young man who looked like he was barely clinging to life. We sprang into action, our training kicking in. We assessed the victims, triaged their injuries, and worked frantically to stabilize them. It was a blur of blood-soaked gauze, IV lines, and the constant beep of the heart monitor. One of the victims, a young man with a bullet wound to the chest, was in dire straits. His breathing was shallow, his pulse weak. It was clear he needed to be airlifted to the trauma center, STAT.
We need a bird, and we need it now.
He was talking about Angel 1, the city's air ambulance, our ticket to getting this kid the specialized care he desperately needed. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for the thwap, thwap, thwap of the helicopter blades.
Angel 1 is en route, ETA 3 minutes.
The sound, usually a beacon of hope, seemed to echo the frantic beating of our own hearts. Every second counted. The arrival of Angel 1 only amplified the chaos. The flight medic and nurse, clad in their flight suits, brought with them a whole new level of intensity.
They moved with the precision of a surgical team, their every movement efficient and practiced.
We briefed them on the patient's condition, our words tumbling over each other in our haste. The flight medic, a no-nonsense woman with a crew cut, took charge. She barked orders, inserted a chest tube, and prepped the patient for transport, all with a calm that belied the urgency of the situation.
The small apartment, already crowded with police and medical personnel, felt like it was shrinking by the second. It was a symphony of beeping machines, barked instructions, and the frantic scramble to save a life.
Despite our best efforts, the young man with the chest wound didn't make it. His heart monitor, which had been steadily declining, finally gave out a long, mournful beep. We had lost him.
Time of death, 23:47, Joe announced, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. It was a phrase we had uttered too many times before, each time chipping away at our souls a little bit more.
The flight medic, her face grim, packed up her equipment.
You boys did everything you could, she said, offering a rare smile. It was a small gesture, but in that moment, it meant the world.
With one of the victims gone, the focus shifted to stabilizing the other two for transport. They were both badly injured, but they were alive, and that's what mattered. As we waited for the coroner to arrive, Joe leaned against the wall, his face etched with fatigue.
You know, he said, you'd think with all those bullet holes, the coroner would just take our word for it.
It was his way of dealing with the stress, finding humor in the darkest of situations. And in a way, he was right. The evidence was pretty clear-cut. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the coroner arrived. He went through his routine, examining the body, pronouncing the death, and then, with the help of the police, zipped the young man into a body bag. The living were loaded into ambulances and transported to the hospital, while the dead were left behind to be claimed by the cold hand of the law. Back at the station, the fluorescent lights seemed harsher than usual, the silence deafening. Joe, ever the one to break the tension, went straight for the coffee pot.
Anyone else need a cup of ambition? He asked, his voice heavy with sarcasm. This night's far from over.
We all chuckled, the sound weary but genuine. It was our way of coping, of finding a bit of normalcy in the midst of the madness. We spent the rest of the shift cleaning the ambulance, restocking supplies, and filling out paperwork. The mundane tasks were a welcome distraction from the horrors we had witnessed. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the city, we finally clocked out. Walking out into the early morning light, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. It had been a hell of a night that had tested our skills and our spirits. But we had made it. We always did. As I drove home, the events of the night replayed in my head. The chaos, the blood, the desperate fight for life, and the ultimate defeat. It was a heavy burden to carry, but it was the burden we had signed up for. We were EMTs, and this was our life, a life of saving lives, one call at a time.